Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, a place where I interview tech leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, futurists, technologists, thought leaders, and even the occasional celebrity about how they are leveraging technology to transform their business. Now, I recently encountered a company called Babbel, which is a whole ecosystem of language learning offerings with more than 10 million subscriptions sold and over 60,000 courses for 14 different languages. So I invited Arne Schepker onto the podcast, who joined Babbel as CMO back in 2015 and later become the CEO in 2019, successfully scaling it from that startup of 250 employees to the household brand that it is today, with over 750 employees and more than 60 nationalities. Because I want to learn more about the story behind it and also how technology is helping people break through the language barrier. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Berlin, where he's waiting to join us in conversation. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
First of all, thanks for having me. I'm Anna Shepka. I'm the CEO at Babbel. We're the world's most sold language learning platform, and as a language learning company, I spend my days trying to crack a pretty tough user problem, and that's learning a foreign language, one that's not your mother tongue. So my challenge is making it easier and faster for our learners to give them the confidence to speak, to allow you to use it in real life and make friends, improve your career, find a partner for life. So pretty life-changing. And myself, I speak 4 languages. I've lived in 8 countries. So like most Babylonians, I actually have firsthand experience of how powerful speaking the local language is and how limiting it feels if you don't. And most recently, as a young dad, I had the pleasure of learning baby language, which was a fun experience.
I love that. And I'm curious, if I was to take you way back before Babbel, where did the worlds of technology and language collide for you, and what sparked your passion for technology? What put you on this path, and ultimately, what is your origin story? Because you did say that you've lived in 8 different countries, so I got a feeling there's a story there too, right?
Well, that's origin story is a deep question. So on the tech beginnings in my life, I'm part of a generation that actually still remembers life before email, life before mobile phones, life before the internet quite vividly. I remember the sounds the very first modems made as you plugged the handle of your phone into the modem. And I went to high school in the US in the 90s, and just the switch from the weekly Thursday evening call with my parents and having to wait and memorize everything that I wanted to talk about for that one moment. All of a sudden, I was able to send an email, so a text message over the great ocean, and that was quite a revelation, right? I think the second moment that pops to my mind is I used to play baseball. And now, there's Moneyball, famous book by Michael Lewis, about how statistics and technology is used in baseball to improve hitting, to improve strategy. And I actually did a mini version of that myself as a kid. Used Excel and very limited coding skills to improve my performance, my hitting performance. So tried to put in, how was I doing against fastballs versus curveballs, lefties versus righties, home stadium versus away games, late counts, early counts. So trying to use the stats that the sport provides to improve my performance. So now there's large databases and great algorithmic models that do that for you. I did the very mini version of it. And then my origin, my career origin actually didn't start in technology. I started my career in companies like Nike or P&G. So physical goods that are sold in physical stores, used physically by customers and consumers. And I actually believe it taught me quite a few lessons about strategic focus, about customer centricity, about deeper user or customer psychology as well. Because you don't get 10 shots, you usually get one shot. That sometimes gets lost in the digital space. The other area where I believe I learned a lot that is probably underdeveloped in the tech industry is the whole area of leadership, which again takes me back to team psychology, employee psychology. Simply the nature of how old the industry is, that's more shaped in the offline world. On the flip side, now I actually get to enjoy the speed at which tech moves. It's just so much faster than FMCG. The access to data, the agile collaboration and experimentation philosophy. So I get to learn from the past and enjoy the future.
Wow, what a great story. And I think we must be of a similar age, because I too remember those days, and the moment that those internal modems and the US robotics modems arrived, and it just felt like this new world was unraveling. In many ways, I'm so happy that we were there at the very beginning. I think you appreciate it much more now. But I'm curious, your mini method of Moneyball there, did it improve your betting?
I would say it helped. More important was actually getting into the batting cage and doing just the repetition and practicing a lot. So it's not the only solution, unfortunately.
And of course, it was that path that led you to Babbel. And for people listening and hearing about you guys for the first time, can you just tell me a little bit more about how you're using technology to improve learning a new language, and also what makes you different from maybe other solutions out there? Yeah, sure.
So Babbel is actually 15 years old this year. Our four founders started Babbel in 2007. And this is, back in the days where the standard, learning method was the typical classroom that you're used to from your school days. The typically published school book. And so that's the industry that we disrupted at the time. And I would say technology has been extremely helpful in making learning more frequent, simply because we can use modern devices, modern day UX to get you to learn in smaller chunks, to get you to learn on a daily basis, rather than the teacher that sees you, on a Wednesday afternoon, and then probably every second Wednesday afternoon because you're on a trip, on vacation, you're sick, or the class has to be canceled for whatever reason. So we see our customers way more often, or learners way more often than any teacher would be, and we also have the ability to steer the activity in between. So I think that the frequency is one big angle that technology adds. It's more targeted. So we're actually able to understand way more granularly what you're good at, what you like doing, what you've done, a week ago, what you should be repeating. So we can surface content, words, grammar at better intervals that theoretically, and a fantastic teacher knows in theory, but it's really hard to do because, again, you don't have that frequency, and you also can't memorize that for, I don't know how many students are in your class. So I think the targeted nature is important that technology brings to the table. And then it's also just more relevant. We can allow you to choose your content. We can allow you to actually pick what you want to do next. We can cater to your learning needs much better than a classroom where you need to serve multiple students. And then the last element I think that technology is adding is just more optimized learning. So let me compare it to a book. Right. Yeah. We have a lot of didactic specialists on the team who come from education publishers, and they all say it's amazing that coming from a world where you edit a book, you write a book, you perfect it to the last dot of the I with your team, and then it gets printed, it gets published, it gets sold in the stores, it gets sent to schools or to individual learners. By the time you actually get any feedback about that book, someone actually has to pick up the phone and call the customer service and tell them there's an error on page whatever, or I don't understand the question. Are you sure this is right? Or you have to wait for the next publishing date for the next edition to come out. We do that cycle in 20 minutes.
Wow.
Right? We get feedback. We see, ooh, weird. There's 100% mistake rate on this question. Maybe the question is wrong. And we can optimize the content way faster than anyone else can. We can optimize it for long-term learning activity. Does this course actually entice you to take the next course in this field, or do we see an interesting or a weird behavior right after this course? So just the ability to optimize and experiment very quickly makes our content even better and more useful for learners. So I think that's the areas where I've already seen technology add a lot of value. Part of what Babbel does differently is we actually are not technology only. So we actually know that you need to combine the proven neuroscience of learning with modern day UX. Right? It's not just an optimization of technology alone. It is getting you to learn, getting your brains to memorize the new language. So we try to seamlessly merge human intelligence with artificial intelligence, and that's a very different approach to everyone else in the industry who's either on the this is proven by university studies 30 years ago side of things, or on the I let technology rule the world, and then you optimize a given system and you don't optimize for actual learning. And our content, for example, everything you use in the app is expert made and human made. So every voice recording, every image, every word you see in the app is human and expert created by someone who has a didactics or linguistics background. This helps us maximize the impact and output or outcome of the 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day that our learners invest, because we know that time is precious, and we know that you need quick feedback of I'm successful, I'm actually learning something. You want to go out and speak in the real world very quickly, and that's also why now we're on a path to truly merge different learning methods together into an ecosystem of learning methods, so that we can offer you a podcast like the one we're on today for passive learning, for on-the-go learning, for on-the-move learning, for listening comprehension. The self-study app that is the core of Babbel's history, and for example, live tutoring classes. So we add the classroom, the conversational, the ad hoc, the peer pressure moment to it, and take you out of the safe space that the app provides. So again, giving you another learning stimulus and a mix of stimuli to learn even faster. So I would say we take the technology added value to learning chunk by chunk, and always look to improve it, because we're about getting you speaking, we're about getting you conversational, we're about getting you to use the language in real life. Because to us, that's the only real reason to learn language. Everything else, I think, can be taken care of by technology.
I love the balance you've achieved there by using technology and not forgetting to bring in the human voice there. And I think it's how the two complement each other that is most appealing to me. And I'm curious, do you think the pandemic kickstarted a new age of learning and digitized skill building? And do you think that trend is still continuing now?
Absolutely. I think all online self-improvement or education solutions saw a major boost during the pandemic. And as for language learning and for Babbel, I can confirm that that was a big boost. And actually, that trend is holding up for us. So we're growing faster than we were during the pandemic now, which is counterintuitive if you compare it to some of the typical consumer subscription tech companies like Netflix or Spotify, which some of which are struggling a bit to keep the pace. I think for us, what's important to remember is that there was a large shift to online language learning already before the pandemic. So that trend just got boosted. It existed before. And we had already disrupted the space. We had already crafted a solution that actually worked. So what happened during the pandemic, and I'll take it in stages. First lockdown, we were all trying to come to terms with life in our own four walls, and with some newfound freedom and some limitations. My take is that everyone who had always dreamed of learning a language was like, all right, now is the time. Now I have 30 minutes more in my day. Now is the time for me to start language learning. And we actually saw a doubling of learning activity 2 days into the lockdown. Country by country, we can do a graph. 2 days into lockdown, we see our learning activity, existing Babbel subscribers, existing Babbel learners, it doubles. And then around about a tripling of the revenue coming from new subscribers, so new learners coming in. And so that was the first lockdown effect that we saw. And obviously it didn't stay that crazy in terms of jump over time. But what did happen is that a second wave of learners started being interested in language learning, and that's what we're seeing sustained now. To me, it's the learners who actually now realize that digital learning works. We've all homeschooled our children. We've been on video calls that also seem to work. So we don't have to explain that Babbel works, that digital language learning works anymore, which is great. And then the second, I think motivation is, and this is more a hunch on my side than I can prove it, we're getting more and more anecdotal feedback that there is a newfound appreciation of social interaction, of deeper, like truly meaningful social interaction between human beings post-pandemic, because we just got stripped of that for short periods of time, and a bit like you and I remember the modem days, right? And we get to appreciate the powers of technology because we don't take it for granted. That's what's happening now. And we find more learners actually wanting to truly learn a language rather than be talking to their phone and giving you the phone to play whatever I just said back to you in English. So that's what we're seeing, and we're seeing sustained growth. And I think it's going to continue. We are going to see schools more digitized. We are going to see hybrid models succeed over time.
And you mentioned the very nice problem there of being in the middle of the pandemic and everything's thriving, your figures are going up. And I'm curious because I was reading that I think you've got something like over 750 employees. So how did you manage to maintain a positive workplace culture across that team during the pandemic, during those lockdowns? What did you take away from that?
Yeah, that was not easy. I can confirm. We just focused really hard on our COVID response. We very clearly laid out in the beginning that it would be team health first, then customer satisfaction, and then revenue. That was the priorities. I ran a daily task force that was looking at how we respond to the situation, and like everyone, we were learning day by day how to respond to the situation. And I do think we had a head start. Being a language learning company, we have employees from around the world. So we already had, for example, Chinese employees not be able to return from their New Year's break as an early warning sign. We used our Italian market as a testing ground for how to respond on the product side. So we removed content that had to do with commute, for example, and put it into the later parts of the product. So we knew how to react on the marketing and on the product side before the lockdowns hit all countries. And then we just made sure that we took our team through the different phases that everyone went through. I mentioned the first lockdowns. Even though we had done a test week and a couple of test days of working remotely, it was still a phase where everyone was thinking, oh my God, how is this going to work? How are we going to take the whole company, digital? And we were very focused on equipment, on tooling, on software, on moving everything that happened offline, online. And that worked surprisingly well. At that point, I was still very focused on young parents because that was the group of Babbel employees that was most struggling with the new reality, juggling work and kids. The second phase was then I call it, excited, rosy, red-eyed, phase. We all fell in love with remote work. It's actually super productive. You get a lot of things done. You have a lot more time in your day because you kill the commute. You can do a bit of sports during the lunch break. All these things all of a sudden were possible. And then we slowly and unnoticeably slid into a third phase, which was I really want to get out of my flat. This is starting to be really lonely. My back is starting to hurt because my equipment isn't great at home. So we slid into a phase where we had to look at mental health a lot more, where we've started focusing on singles who had just recently moved to Berlin from abroad, who were suffering from that loneliness and the isolation and needed the care. And then I think as we moved out of the pandemic, we started focusing on how do we use the hybrid model of online remote collaboration and in-office, face-to-face collaboration productively, and are now still busy developing a new balance between the two that works for teams. And we give a lot of freedom to the teams to decide that for themselves, and actually saw that different teams choose different models. Different team members have different preferences, and it's actually possible to be productive as a team, to have team spirit without actually seeing each other every day in person. Obviously, we went through all the cool things that you can do in the beginning, like doing a tour of your apartment, like MTV Crib style thing. Having a virtual team event with a palm reader. I still don't know how to do that on a virtual screen, but it actually worked. So we did all of that, and are now, as said, quite busy developing the future. And I think the last thing I'll say, it does cost money. You need to invest into creating that new future. It's not for free either, because just one of the things is the proper equipment. It doesn't come for free.
And you've done just that. You're building a new future, and you've been on quite a journey, because I was also reading that you've evolved your services from just a mobile app to a multi-product ecosystem. So can you expand on that and the challenges you've came across to deliver this product here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I said before, we obsess over getting you speaking, getting you conversational, getting you to a point where you feel like you can have a conversation in real life, like you can crack a joke in another language, talk to your in-laws or whatever you want to do. And so we spend tons of time talking to our learners, trying to understand where we can improve. And one of the things we noticed, actually, as I was sitting in living rooms with learners around the world, was a lot of them were already, and a lot of the successful learners were stitching together different learning methods. And this is more hacking them together chaotically, because none of them actually had a plan behind it. There wasn't I'm using Babbel as the app, and then I'm watching this film on YouTube, but it was more, let me do YouTube. Let me see. Let me try out this course. Let me do this. It was more a creative chaos than actually a plan that had didactic outcomes behind it. And we thought, our learners actually need help. we can help, because A, we know how learning works. B, we can totally provide all of these learning methods and services and recommendations digitally. So we launched ourselves on the journey of building the ecosystem, of adding more learning methods to the mix, and then using technology to make sure that you know what's next, that we can help you figure out what's right for you and your learning style, and the goal that you're really after, to move from one method to another, and to make the methods actually make each other stronger. One of the realizations we had when we launched live tutoring is that our teachers actually love teaching at Babbel, because you just get more feedback from Babbel and can actually see, okay, what type of learner is this coming through the door? You get great content, so you don't have to redo the content at all times as a teacher, and print out pages, etc. before the class. But you're going to get something great, and you can focus a lot more on the conversational element, on the group dynamics, on cultural elements, on stories and anecdotes. So the part of teaching that actually is truly fun and truly meaningful for most language teachers. So I think that's the power that we create within the multi-method ecosystem that we're now building.
And I was also reading that Babbel's been deploying social initiatives to help Ukrainian refugees recently as well. Is that something you can expand on there?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we need to start by saying that, to me, products or companies actually should always be developed to solve a real user problem. and should always be rooted in a purpose. And then monetization will follow. One of my strong beliefs, and that's a shared belief across Babbel. So to us, it actually wasn't a big choice to develop a free product for displaced Ukrainian citizens who are Ukrainian speakers to learn German, Polish, or English. And a grassroots cross-functional team rallied together internally and actually designed that product in a matter of weeks. That is now used by close to 400,000 Ukrainians. The power of speaking the language in the country that you either want to migrate to or have already migrated to, and now need to build a new life, even if temporary, is unrivaled. And we already saw that in 2015-16 when Babbel was working with the Berlin Senate to provide language learning services and free access codes to Syrian refugees back in the day. So we knew the power of what a product could do for refugees, and that's why we said, okay, we need to do this, even if it made zero business sense, right? No business algorithm in the world would ever do that. But we saw a crisis. We saw we could help. It's the right thing to do.
It really is, and I applaud you for doing that. And like you said, the algorithms might say don't do that, but I love how you've done it for all the right reasons. And what's next for Babbel? Where do you go from here?
Well, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I think overall we're in a fantastic place. We're cracking a problem that's hard to crack, that we're good at cracking. It's a high stakes problem for our learners. Potentially life-changing problem to crack, learning a new language. We're considered the quality leader in the space very clearly. We're growing strongly. We're generating cash while doing so. We're a purpose-driven company. We don't have the usual talent attraction or retention issues that you see in technology. So I believe we're really well positioned, and we have all the tools at our disposal to pursue our strategy. And that strategy remains the same. We want to expand our language learning ecosystem to include more learning methods, and cover more use cases to deliver an even better learning experience. And I think Babbel Lives, our live tutoring offering, is a great example of this. The second element is scaling our B2B, so our corporate offering, which has lots of room to grow. It's about a third of the language learning market overall. Taking out the governmental spend, so a ton of room to grow for Babbel, and we're seeing great traction there. And then continuing the successful growth journey that we're on especially in the US, which is by now, by the way, our biggest market, our strongest market globally, has overtaken the German-speaking region, and it was I think 7-year journey to get there, and we just reached a new record with 1 million subscriptions sold in the US alone in the first half of the year, showing that we're one of the few tech companies or consumer tech companies who are successful in the US.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm curious, what is the number one language that people are learning in the US? Is it Spanish, predictably, or is it something else?
By a wide margin.
Yeah. Ah, brilliant. Well, we started the podcast today talking about your origin story, what put you on this path. And as we come full circle, I'm going to ask you to leave us something leave everyone listening with something now. Would it be a song that we can add to our Spotify playlist, or a book that we can add to our Amazon wish list? All I ask is if there is a story behind the choice that you're going to leave us with today. So what's it going to be?
I use Spotify a lot more than reading books, but my Spotify hit list is so dominated by my son's favorite songs that all I can give you is Croatian kids songs or Pippi Longstocking movie songs. I'll go with the book to keep it a bit more serious. I recently read a book called New Work Needs Inner Work by Bettina Rollo, and the book describes a hands-on experience by companies actually looking to introduce or optimize self-management principles, holacracy principles, new work principles, and I've personally done an experiment with one of my teams on introducing a mix of self-management and holacracy with a coach, etc. And that experiment actually worked really well for 4 months, and then crashed and burned in the subsequent 4 months. And the aha that Ms. Rolo describes in the book is that self-management or modern management approaches actually require a higher level of personal maturity, of self-reflection, and a constant learning mindset from everyone across the organization, right? And so before you can change the culture, you need to reflect upon and potentially change yourself. And I found that a super powerful message, and from my own experience resonated with the experiment that we ran at Babbel.
Absolutely love that. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Before I let you go, for anyone listening just wanting to find out more information about Babbel and everything that we've talked about today, what's the best starting point for everything? Yeah,
just download the app, and we'll take you by the hand once you get started.
Well, I always say at the end of every episode that technology works best when it brings people together. And I love how, with Babbel, you've created this whole ecosystem of language learning offerings with, I think, something like 10 million subscriptions sold, over 60,000 courses in 14 different languages. It's incredible what you've achieved here. And I know this is just the beginning, and the great work you're doing with the Ukrainian refugees, etc. I applaud you for that. So just a big thank you for taking the time to come on here and share your story with me today.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me.
What a great guy and an amazing story. And I just love that behind the technology, it's transparency, authenticity, and the human voice that is at the heart of the company. It's also interesting to hear how the pandemic has ultimately digitised skill building. But over to you. Let me know your thoughts about anything you heard today. If you or your business need help with business blogs and thought leadership content for your leadership team, or you want help launching your own podcast and letting somebody else worry about editing audio files and uploading to Apple Podcasts, etc., you can find out more about how you can work with me by visiting my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. But a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.